You found yourself on another episode of Locked On Bulls. On today's episode, we're going to look at an article written by Darnell Mayberry with the biggest questions facing the Chicago Bulls over the 2025 season. We're going to look at that plus more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. My name is Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. What's going on, everydayers? We're glad to have you guys here on another episode of Locked On Bulls. And we're going to start off this one with an article written by Darnell Mayberry in which he talked about the biggest questions facing the Chicago Bulls in the 2024-25 season. Burning questions is what he listed. He had 5 questions here. So how many we're going to get through. The first question here is Lonzo Ball ready to play and how much he can contribute? That's a question that is on the mind of a lot of Bulls fans. Now, you have some Bulls fans that I think are a little bit more radical in their thinking that Lonzo Ball is going to come back and make an impact this season for the Chicago Bulls. There are some that look at it and say, hey, Lonzo Ball, is he even going to be able to stay on the court? And then you have me. I kind of sit in the middle of that. I do think Lonzo Ball is going to play this season. I don't know how many games. He's going to be on the restrictions as far as back-to-back minutes. Those are going to be there. Any player that's been out the amount of time that Lonzo Ball has been out, they're gonna be on a restriction of some sort. Now, the question I would think in this is that what is that restriction realistically going to look like? Like, I think they're going to start it off, be a little bit more, kind of in controlled settings on that, and they could come off of that restriction bit by bit as the season goes on, as long as he can stay healthy. But Lonzo, he's doing something that's unprecedented. He's had 2 surgeries that nobody in the NBA has ever returned back from, and so he's trying to break ground in a lot of new ways. Now, I always look at Jonathan Isaac as one of the players you can kind of look at when you're out of basketball that long, how that return can go. Jonathan Isaacs, who, came back and played, I think like 40 games, his initial return, 16 minutes. He even still played, only like 16, 18 minutes a game last season, even though he's become one of the better perimeter defenders. So just watch out for that, story of Lonzo Ball. But I do think that is a question that a lot of people are wondering. A, is he going to be healthy at the start of the season? Is he going to officially get cleared? We know that he was in that 5-on-5. That was the last hurdle before he has to get cleared officially for NBA basketball. And then when he does return, what is he going to look like? What's the restrictions going to look like? And how much are the Chicago Bulls going to use him? But we'll talk a little bit more about Lonzo Ball towards the end of this episode. So I'm not going to get in too heavy on the Lonzo Ball topic. The next question that Darnell Mayberry had here is, what do the Bulls do with their veteran players? And this is one of the biggest questions I have for this team. Of course, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, we've already heard that the Bulls are going to either be shopping, have shopped, or will hope to shop these guys over the course of the season. Zach LaVine is going to be here, right? And, I've even said on episodes before, like, prepare yourself for the chance that Zach LaVine is here long-term. And by long-term, I mean past the season. He could be on this team at the start of next season. Nikola Vucevic may be a different story, right? Like, you could see a team with a guy who can average 18 and 11 if they need some center play, if they have the defensive system to kind of absorb the shortcomings of Nikola Vucevic. He could be another guy that could be moved by the trade deadline. But outside of those guys, I'm still interested to see what do the Bulls do with Torrey Craig, right? The Bulls, who hopefully have learned, and that's a big hope when it comes down to AK and Eversley, but have hopefully learned from their mistake of not moving Andre Drummond at the trade deadline last year. Whereas reportedly, this rumor, right, is that they were offered 2 second-round picks for Andre Drummond from the Philadelphia 76ers. The Bulls end up not biting on that deal because of reasons, right? We know that they were trying to make the playoffs. They were trying to push for the play-in, those type of things. But they didn't take advantage of getting more assets back. And while 2 second-round picks isn't, exactly amazing, we do know, for example, that AK has had actually some pretty good success in the second round. So, and I'm talking about here, I'm not even talking about Jokic. I'm talking about with Ayo Dosunmu, right? So, and you want to get the most assets possible, especially if it's for a piece you're going to let walk away anyway. And hopefully the Bulls have learned from that. If at the trade deadline, which I do think that some teams, I don't know if it's going to be the 2 second-round picks like you got for Andre Drummond, but if somebody's willing to offer you anything for Torrey Craig, to me, you take it. Torrey Craig is clearly not part of your future. You have young players in the wings that are ready to hopefully step into a spot with Modest Bucilis, Julian Phillips, both there. That's not even to mention other guys that you have on this roster that could be, ready to contribute. So because of that, if a team, especially a team with a superstar, which Torrey Craig has always played better when he's played with stars, and he's a consummate role player. If they need and want Torrey Craig, yeah, you take that. Like, I think you ship that off to a playoff contender, and you get the assets back, and yeah, maybe you hold on to those. You draft them outright. Maybe you pair them with something else to move on another deal later. But anyway, you should be absorbing assets. And then Javon Carter, who is about to be 29 years old, didn't play well at all for the Chicago Bulls last season. I didn't in any stretch of the imagination. If any team calls you wanting Javon Carter, because he has played well on other teams that have had good systems before and playoff teams before, to me, you absolutely sell that off because he's already a guard, which is one of your deepest positions. So yeah, you look to move on from that. So the Bulls could have these assets, and if they've learned like they should have from selling too late on some of their assets in prior seasons, this is your opportunity to show that you've learned from that, get some assets back, and see what you get. And that, like I said, this is without looking at Zach LaVine, without looking at Nikola Vucevic. You still could have some players that other teams are interested on this roster. Chris Duarte is another one, right? Now, I know there are some contingent of Bulls fans that think that Chris Duarte is going to come here and be what he was his rookie year, and maybe he will be. But, if a team does look at Chris Duarte, if he does play well for the Chicago Bulls, him being a restricted free agent, so the team would then get his bird rights. Maybe a team is looking at Chris Duarte as well. So these are things that are definitely questions that I think are fair here to ask of the Chicago Bulls heading into the season. What's going to happen there? And then as far as players on this roster, the first one that they have is how good is Josh Giddey? That's a question that everybody wants the answer to. We can look at all the data in the world. We can look at all the advanced analytics and everything. And, we can try to draw a conclusion. But when it comes down to it, it depends on how Josh Giddey looks here. He's going to have a role that is kind of more suited to his skill set. Can he get back to the numbers that he had in 2022-23? And then even if he does get back to those numbers, how does that impact the way that the Chicago Bulls are operating? How does it impact wins? How does it fit with other teammates? There's a big part of that. And this is one of the bigger questions because he's a restricted free agent at the end of the season. You just traded Alex Caruso for him. And no, I'm telling you guys right now, Bulls fans, any fans that say, oh, well, the Bulls shouldn't play him much so they can try to save on his contract extension. Come on, man. Y'all, this ain't 2K. That's not how it works. That's not how it works at all. Like, yeah, if Josh Giddey has some type of all-star season, could you end up paying more? Yes, but his agent, they know the value there. They're not going to all of a sudden sell low. He's not in a situation where it's Ayo Dosunmu and Kobe White out there. Now, of course, he's going to be out there competing, and you could have to pay a little bit more, but you're not going to not play a player that you just traded one of your best trade asset by many people's, thought process there to then not play them. Giddey's going to play. The question is, how good is he going to play? Is he going to look more like an all-star caliber player? He's been in the top 10 of triple doubles every season of his NBA career. How much does that help this Bulls team? How much does it get out of Modest Bucilis, Patrick Williams, Jalen Smith? How better do these guys look playing next to a creator like Josh Giddey? The questions are there. The answers, hopefully they're there on the basketball court and the Bulls find the answers to those questions before they have to extend Josh Giddey, and we'll see what happens there. But that's a fair question, I think, as well, poised here by Darnell Mayberry. Next up, who will emerge this season? There are a lot of contenders for this. Of course, Kobe White can take his game a little bit further. I think Kobe started to, he's definitely more than scratched the surface, but I don't think he's done adding to his game, evolving yet. He's been one of those DeMar DeRozan, mentees. So, DeMar is somebody who tries to add to their game every single season. Kobe puts in the work every year. And so first off, how much better does Kobe White get is the way I look at this. And then, yeah, you have, of course, other people. Ayo Dosunmu, who had a career year last year, playing multiple roles, coming off the bench, starting, right? Being the lead point guard at sometimes, doing some ball handling, not doing that, playing off ball, grew as a three-point shooter. You got Patrick Williams here, who I keep going back to that month of December for Patrick Williams, but let's be clear. As much as I look at that month and I think that's going to be similar to the play style that the Bulls are going to adapt this year, I think there's going to be similar to the role that Patrick Williams could play. It's all a mirage until he does it consistently. And so that's something that you're hoping for that. And then, of course, Jalen Smith. Julian Phillips, Dalen Terry, Monas Busilis, Chris Duarte. These are all really young guys that still have some that they can uncover in their game. And if they do start emerging, that just adds to the Bulls and what they're trying to do with having this young team that can ultimately, hopefully, punch above their weight and get further than what they, and give them a base, right? More players that they can build something sustainable with while still adding to the team. And then the last question that Darnell Mayberry has poised here is, will the Bulls retain their draft pick? For many Bulls fans, this is the biggest question. For me, I'm looking at the emergence. I'm looking at how well Josh Giddey is. But one of the biggest questions is, will they retain their draft pick? And what does it look like in getting there, right? Do they get some lottery luck, as far as maybe they do look like one of those teams that barely miss out on the play-in, but they end up getting some luck moving in the top 4? Do they have some unluck in the lottery? Are they unlucky to where, let's say they finish with a bottom 9 or 10 record, but a team leapfrogs them in the lottery and pushes them out, and then that pick goes to the San Antonio Spurs? Do they just outright keep their pick, right? Does it end up at number 9, number 10, and you keep that pick? You add a top 10 talent to this young core you're already building here. That's a huge question for the future of the Bulls. And that's one that's kind of out of their control, in their control at the same time. And we'll see what the Bulls aren't tanking. I want to be clear. I do not expect the Chicago Bulls to tank, but I do think that this is a team that, if they can keep that draft pick, it definitely helps change some things in some direction for the Chicago Bulls. And we'll see what it's going to be. But that next up, we're going to be talking more about our Chicago Bulls, of course, and DeMar DeRozan's comments on leaving our Chicago Bulls. But before we get into that, we got to get to a message from one of our sponsors, and that's Gametime. All right, we've been talking to you guys about Gametime for a while now. Gametime is one of the best places to get tickets. Events are just better when they're live. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live event easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So you can go to right now, you can go to Gametime as you always do, and you can get views from your seats. The panoramic view from your seats offer a great view of exactly how you're going to see that seat before you buy that ticket. Also, they have the Gametime guarantee, which is one of the best guarantees in the ticketing industry. If you find seats in the same section for less, Gametime will refund you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered by the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKED NBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Bulls fans. So we want to get into the next topic here, man. And that is, of course, DeMar DeRozan, the former Chicago Bull, has, had an interview on Podcast P in which he gave his thoughts on leaving the Chicago Bulls, gave thoughts on a lot of things. Like, one of the biggest things that I took away from this interview was him talking about the young guys. Like, you just understand that DeMar DeRozan really loved Ayo Dosunmu, Kobe White, Dalen Terry, Patrick Williams. Like, he really loved these guys. And, him even saying that he wanted to invest in them because he wanted to be part of their success. That was one of the things that absolutely stood out to me. It's one of the things I give him tons of credit for, is that I have said for a long time that the lessons that these young guys have learned from DeMar DeRozan are going to impact them for the rest of their careers. Having a mentor take you under their wing like that, a veteran take you under their wing like that, and teach you. And DeMar DeRozan, while he's a flawed player, make no mistake about it, he's still a guy that continually works on his game. He puts in work on his craft. He stays primarily healthy, right? And he's been able to adapt in a era where the league has gone more three-point shooting, more of that. He's been able to stay in the mid-range and still be one of the best scorers in NBA history. You cannot take that away from him. And so that was one thing that absolutely stood out to me the most in this interview. But then outside of that, he talked about, leaving the Bulls, and he said this: me being 34, I think I missed 3 games. I led the league in minutes played by far. Those just show the hard work, dedication, and the love of the game the love of the game that had, and just the will I tried to have to put the Bulls back on top, make the Bulls a respectable team. I gave them all my all through ups and downs, the good, the bad, the ugly. But one thing that I really appreciated about my time in Chicago was definitely my teammates, from Kobe White to Patrick Williams to Vooch, Lonzo, all those guys that I played with. It was a special time, and I gained a different kind of bond with those guys that was there for me. And hey, listen, you guys know, me and Pat, while we were here covering Locked On Bulls, we weren't necessarily the highest guys on DeMar DeRozan as far as staying with this team long-term leading up to this offseason. But one thing you cannot deny is that DeMar DeRozan is one of the best free agent acquisitions by the Chicago Bulls ever. For a team that doesn't typically get the big name free agents, for a team that isn't high on the priority list, it seems like by most free agents, right? Is that DeMar came here and he was everything that he was advertised to be. Yeah, you can look at DeMar when you're analyzing the game of basketball. You're always going to look at what players aren't. What are they lacking? What aren't they bringing, right? But he came in and he was exactly what we needed him to be. He was a big-time scorer when we needed him to be. He was a clutch player every single year that he was here, leading the league in clutch minutes, played and all that over the course of those years, right? Hitting the big shots, those type of things, the runs that he went on, especially in that first year, how many times he bailed the Chicago Bulls out when we just needed a bucket or he allowed a team to go on a big run. He was part of allowing that big run too, right? You cannot overlook that aspect of it at all. And I'm not saying that we should, but DeMar DeRozan came to Chicago at a time, like I said, not a lot of free agents come to Chicago. Matter of fact, the fact that DeMar and Alex Caruso, they're probably two of the better signings, probably definitely in the top 10 free agent signings that we've ever had here. And give some respect to DeMar, right? Like it's not DeMar's fault on roster construction. That's not up to him as a player, right? And when you're a front office, it's your job to put together a roster that fits and makes sense together. And the Bulls weren't able to do that. They initially did that a little bit with Lonzo. There were still some things that the team was short on, big man depth, things like that. And I always personally say, hey, what if Lonzo didn't get hurt and that team would have focused on fixing some of the shortcomings of that team? We would be in a lot different of a spot. But also, we could not know who Kobe White is right now if that didn't happen, right? So the woulda, coulda, shouldas are always going to be there. But just DeMar and what he brought to the Chicago Bulls team is something I'm always going to respect DeMar for, because he came and played for my favorite team and he performed for my favorite team. Frustrated the hell out of me at sometimes, right? With defense, things like that. The team overall frustrated me. Like I said, it's not all on DeMar DeRozan. And, never do you want to blame anything all on one player, because it very rarely is all on one player. It's just not, right? And so, what DeMar came and what he was able to do here and the respect that he has, DeMar's always going to be loved by the city to a degree. Now, he played here 3 years, right? So he didn't have the longevity that some other former players that we always, feel close to are going to have. But, it is what it is. And, the quote that I talked about with him and the mentorship, this one, I was so close with all of the guys like Io. I just wanted to be part of their success as well as their growth. Watch how hard these dudes work. I didn't want to see it go. I wanted to be part of these young guys who work so hard success. It was like, come on, man. We got to lost my quote there. We got to do this because if it goes the other way from the top, they got to make a decision. And then they make a decision. It's going to go down a whole route that may prolong you not seeing success. Now, that's a level of awareness from DeMar DeRozan, right? To the whole thing of, if this does not go the way, they may make a change that's going to keep you from seeing wins, is basically the way that you have to look at that. And he's right. DeMar's seen it before. He's been there before, right? With the Toronto Raptors, he's been there. He's experienced that before, being on a team that couldn't get over the hump, that couldn't get the success, and they ended up breaking that team apart. Vooch said it. DeMar's been there. So it's not something outside the realm of, we definitely know not out the realm of possibility, but it definitely seems like DeMar understood and maybe knew before everyone else that, hey, this thing is probably coming to an end because we're just not having the success. And him leading into free agency, I mean, hey, it is what it is. And that's just the game of basketball. But I just wanted to spend some time here because even as somebody who criticized DeMar DeRozan for his play at times, and I was never someone that necessarily looked at it and thought the young guys just aren't progressing just because DeMar's here. I think that sometimes you have to show it that you want it, right? Even no matter who's here. But it does now open up an opportunity for these young guys to show what they can bring and to do it consistently. And if they do that, great. And there are going to be some people that absolutely, if Patrick Williams takes the leap this season, there are absolutely going to be people that look at that and say, oh, well, that happened because DeMar left. And I get it where that's going to be rooted in. But I think ultimately you also got to factor in how much confidence DeMar gave these guys, how much of the game DeMar gave these guys, and how much of that is going to be something that spreads out through their whole careers. We've already heard Kobe talk about taking Modest Bucilis under his wing, and Patrick Williams has said that, right? And even I can't remember which one of them said, because that's what DeMar did for us. I want to do that, right? So it's things like that that's how you build culture, and that's how you build a mentality. And so let's hope that it doesn't, leave us again, kind of like how Dwayne Wade came in here, mentor Jimmy Butler for him to eventually join the Miami Heat 4 years later, whatever that was. But, DeMar's time here, though, is one that it's always going to be a double-edged sword, because there's so much that went right for him and his individual and what he brought here. There's so much that went wrong for the team, right? And like I said, that's not necessarily on DeMar. That's more on the front office. It's more on coaching and personnel. But, it is what it is there. And hopefully better days ahead at some point for the Chicago Bulls, and we can get ahead of this thing and start correcting this ship and getting to the place that we all want to get to, and that's having a winning franchise. But next up, we'll be talking about Lonzo Ball. The question is should Lonzo Ball be on trade watch during the 2024-25 season? We'll talk more on that, but first, got to get into a message from eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. By the way, have you guys ever had to change a transmission in a Chevy Suburban? Yeah, I had to be there. eBay Motors helped me through that. So keep your ride or die alive or die. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. The eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, Bulls fans, before we get out of here today, got one last topic, and that's on Lonzo Ball. Now, I talked about it at the first topic, the question that Darnell Mayberry presented there as far as Lonzo Ball and will he be able to play, what impact he's going to make for the Chicago Bulls next season. I want to talk about this. And I know not everybody's going to agree with me. There's going to be a lot of Ball family stands in the comments. Gonna look out for Eco Bean, my little brother Eco Bean. Love Eco Bean. Definitely not Ball Facts. People think I'm talking about Ball's Facts. It's not Ball Facts. It's another guy with like Ball Fam or something. It's a weird has a very weird username. He's a weird dude, right? But these are two guys that are very vocal on still thinking that Lonzo Ball could be the starting point guard for the Chicago Bulls. Now, take that away or not, doesn't matter. It is what it is when it comes down to that. But should Lonzo Ball be on trade watch for the Chicago Bulls this upcoming year? And I think yes. I think that not only because of whatever's going on with his health, of course, if he is healthy, that changes this a little bit as far as what you can get back. But the thing is that to me, you've invested in Josh Giddey as your starting point guard of the future. I think that's just what you've done. You made a trade for him. You got to move off of it. And, it is what it is there. And I think ultimately as well, when you look at this, is that if you can get anything back for Lonzo, because I do not see the Chicago Bulls retaining Lonzo Ball at the end of this season under any circumstance unless he's willing to take an extremely team-friendly contract. And maybe that's there. Maybe the Bulls and Lonzo have already kind of had those conversations a little bit to where maybe they feel confident. That's part of the reason why maybe they didn't file the career-ending injury exception or anything like that, where they feel confident Lonzo's going to remain here in Chicago. Why go to a different spot? Stay here. Where you've been embraced and they saw you through your rehab. So I want to be clear. There's absolutely a chance that can happen. In no way am I saying Lonzo is absolutely a goner. But I do think the Bulls should explore that, because if Lonzo is healthy, right, and a team wants to absorb Lonzo's ball rights, Lonzo's bird rights, that's crazy, bird rights, to be able to retain him and go over the salary cap to do so. And even if he ends up being a bench point guard who can still guard to get some three-point shooting, there's definitely a lane for that in the NBA, right? Like if he can still defend. And I think it comes down to how Lonzo Ball looks when he comes back. Does he look like a player that can still defend? Is he a step or slow behind? Those type of things. How much is those shooting still there? How healthy can he be? So there's a lot of questions there. But if you have an offer on the table that's realistic, that gets your team better, gets you assets where you otherwise would not have some, I personally think the Chicago Bulls have to explore that with where they are right now. I think that's the case. Like you have your point guard now of the future. That is Josh Giddey. You have that, right? Now your question is how well does Kobe and that fit together? And I understand that, but I don't think you are in a place where you're already trying to move off Zach partly because of his contract. You're looking to move on from Vooch partly because of his age and because of his contract. That you already have Io there who can be a backup one or two in this. Like, I think you have to try to explore that. Now, let's say Lonzo Ball does come back. Let's say he plays even more than I'm estimating, between 18 and 20 minutes per game. He looks like a really good defender still off the bench, whatever. Maybe the Bulls, if they are sure they can get a team-friendly contract. But the one thing that I will say in this, if you can get anything back, and even if he does walk away, let me be clear. If Lonzo does walk away for free, I don't think you've lost a whole lot of that. Getting the salary cap back is what it is there. But I do think the Bulls should be looking to explore what's out there on the market for that and to see what they can get back. But you guys can let me know what you guys think on that down below. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? You think I'm crazy? There are going to be some people absolutely who react to that. But I do think that Lonzo Ball could be on the trade watch this upcoming year. I do think that. I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but I do think that that's a possibility. You guys can let me know what you guys think down below. But that's our time for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. Locked On Bulls is free and available on every podcasting app and platform of your choice, as well as YouTube, the Odyssey app, and Amazon Fire TV. If you want to follow me, you can do so at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. I'll see you lovely and beautiful people tomorrow. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.